did help some people that could resonate and had a stronger emotional nourishment and went already through the emotional phases because of enough self-love and such, the people that way more damage to them. And that is basically the majority of the world. The majority. With a different awareness, because that is head, it's not looking at reality for what it is. You got to go about things always based on each person's awareness separately and see how you can nurture them to the extent where they can start nurturing themselves, because that is the key. The key is to find a way to get to people to a point where they can help themselves. So help people to help themselves, because then with the right resources and stuff and the right knowledge, they will find their way. That's why this information is very important even for people that are more emotionally actualized, as much as for people that aren't as much emotionally actualized, to understand how it works, because it makes us understand each other. It makes us understand better children. It makes us understand better parents. It makes us understand better genders, different genders. Our ability to understand how we work, our ability to emotionally also understand that I had before. When ending, I was always coming from this more clear-headed perspective where I'm really reasonable and where I use all these concepts and I can really explain my emotions very well. But what I was taking out of the equation was that for being understood, you also need to feel understood. And feeling understood is an emotional process more than a conceptual one. So me saying these things in a certain context won't help as much as, for example, me actually being there for you and truly listening to you and really understanding you and really like making you understand that there is nothing wrong with you and really make you understand that it is fine to be where you are. It's fine to make mistakes, because that's also something that I realized quite a bit. My mother always gave me the room to fuck up. In retrospect, it's a gift. It's a gift to be able to have your own experience and look at someone and allow them to make a mistake. Because what I would do is like, yeah, but why would I want that person to make a mistake? If I can avoid that person to make a mistake, I want him to avoid it. But the thing is, if you're still in the experience phase of your life where you're emotionally being nourished and you don't understand so much conceptualizations and stuff when you're still a child, to put it that way, then making mistakes can help you grow. Of course, you can still wonder, like, what if the mistakes go at the cost of other people? That's when you need to find certain ways to overcome the damage and to avoid that from happening. But when it just comes to living your life and making mistakes, allowing people to make mistakes, or children to make mistakes more so, gives them so much room to grow. Because that's really like, when I went through life and when I look back, I always had this freedom to express myself, to try out stuff. And I would understand and realize if my mother would be much more protective and control freak, basically, then every single mistake that I would make, she would really blame me, make me judge myself, and literally cut away all my inner confidence, all this inner passion of understanding the world. She would cut it away and make me literally complete slave for her validation or for her acknowledgement, which really blocks away completely my creativity and my ability to actualize myself. So the ability to just understand that really allows you to be a better parent, to be a better mother, to be a better father, to be a better friend. And that's why I'm explaining this from both sides, because I know that you have this duality where when you come about things more conceptually, you don't really understand why people have to go through mistakes, why they have to experience it. I never really understood that. I look at history repeating itself and I say, why do we have to repeat the same mistakes as in the past? It makes no sense. But it's because I'm emotionally nourished. If you're emotionally not nourished, you have to go through the experience. And then the best way of going about it is in a way where you're not a kid that grows up with guns. You go through that emotional nourished process when you're younger, and if you're older, you get in an environment or you get people around you that can nourish you properly, that can understand you properly in a way that you're fine with making mistakes. And don't judge yourself or don't beat yourself up over it, because it only does more harm than good. And I know that if I would have this conversation with myself, because that's really what I like to do, if I would have this conversation with myself, I would say, like, but Athene, what are you talking about? It makes no sense, because if people do more damage with their behavior, then you need some structure, you need conceptualized framework, reason, rationality to avoid more damage from happening. But the thing is, though, if I didn't talk to my own previous self, I would say, like, yeah, but that's how you do overcome more damage. Because if you try to control and really manipulate people or push them in a certain direction, you're not solving the cause, you're only treating the symptoms in a way that is not long-term scalable. And that's the problem. And then I would say, like, my older self, I would say, like, yeah, but that's easy to say. I have saved all these lives and stuff. And if I wouldn't have had this approach, then I wouldn't have had the impact that I had. And then if I would talk, I would say, like, yeah, that's not fully accurate, because if you would be able to find a way to turn people into these nourished people that can grow and actualize themselves, then rather than just you having to look at your achievements, you would actually make a ripple effect where other people are creators and have an achievement themselves. But then what I would say is, like, yeah, but if that is the case, you're giving people too much credit. You're assuming that when you give people the ability to make mistakes and to actually just be who they are, that they won't take advantage. I mean, we live in a time where freedom and the ability to be who you are is more praised than anything, and yet still we live in a shithole. But then what I would say is, like, yeah, but that's because you're looking at it from a conceptual perspective and you miss out the fundamental foundation of what brings about a stable person, which is the emotional framework. If a person is emotionally not nourished, then obviously he won't be able to grow and have this clear-headed and focus that you have, and you're taking that for granted. Like when you grew up and when you had all this love from your parents, you assume that this is a prerequisite for everyone and everybody has it, but that's not true. So being able to give that to people is essential. Then what I would say to myself is, like, yeah, but that doesn't stop the damage that these people are causing, and you have to do something about that. The reality setting shows that you have to make sure that you stop the damage, and at the end of the day, reality overrides emotions anyway. You can say all these things, you can talk about emotional nourishment or whatever, but reality at the end of the day, if you don't have food, you starve. But then if I would have to answer that question, I would say, like, yeah, but your ability to do what you do is only because of the emotional nourishment you've had. And if you wouldn't have had it yourself, you would have been part of this problem that you are now trying to combat. So being able to actually truly help people to grow emotionally is fundamental to even your way of going about life. But then what I would say, my older version, I would say, like, yeah, but to which extent can you even overcome that? To which extent, sometimes you have to just look at reality for what it is and just accept, okay, these people might be broken. And then what I would tell him And that's where I would hit my previous self. I would say like, but that's because of a lack of understanding. It's because you don't know how to help people to emotionally nourish them. And that's why you don't trust them. And that's when I would get hit. I would say like, but so basically you're telling me that people on a fundamental level want to be good. And if they're emotionally nourished, they would just be like me. And I would say like, yes, it's because of a lack of awareness. And I would then ask myself, but how do you do that then? Because I'm trying so much. People working on love, even in this building. But then I would say like, no, you haven't had people work on love and self-trust and all this. You have had people work to be productive and use this love and all this development as a way to become productive. But the problem with that is that you're not truly creating an environment without judgment and without expectations when you tell them this is what you need to do. People are not truly building on their own self-love and their trust when they have this gloomy expectation layer on top of that forces them to be productive. And then they will never really truly allow themselves to give themselves to actualize, to be creative, because they constantly have this checkup of like, oh, Daddy Athene might kick me out or whatever. And that's the thing. Like, the problem is where it all arises, issues and all the doubt that I had when it comes down to reality was mainly a failure myself. Was my own failure. It was not the failure of people, because people are just the way they are. It was a failure on my part because I had a lack of understanding, and it made me doubt in people's essence of being good. And as a result, what I did was I even warped it to the extent where I thought it was a choice because I can choose, but that is just a result of me being inside my head. When people have a low awareness, does a child choose to be evil? I would say, of course not. Well, imagine these children staying children as they grow up. But I say like, but they develop an advanced, more rational part of the brain. That doesn't add up, right? But then I would say like, but their emotional part is behind. So of course they will just use their reason to find what they lack emotionally. They will never get fully, truly developed. And that's the thing, like being able to emotionally nourish people allows them to grow from within, to get to a point where they become more clear-headed and clear-minded, and then change and doing good comes naturally. And that's really something that I didn't realize because I didn't know how to do it. And this is fascinating part. If you grow in awareness and you grow into understanding things and emotionally you're more and more fulfilled and you start more using cognitive empathy and really understand things more from conceptualizing things, you assume that you can just explain to people what the problem is, just as much as I'm doing right now. I used to assume that I could just explain you guys the problem and it's fixed, but that's bullshit. A lot of the people that are watching right now this stream, the only way that I can truly help you is by emotionally relate to you guys and by guiding you guys to your own emotional blockades. And it's only then that you can actualize yourself. Of course, I can give some tips where you can really follow the emotion and try to understand where it comes from by just experiencing it more and more, and really not judge yourself and don't have expectations and accept yourself for who you are, love yourself, accept you for even the mistakes. But that requires you to really follow the emotions, and in order to even do so, it requires to be understood, to be accepted. Of course, I'm trying to do the best thing right now to explain these things and to help you guys in order to really trust in yourself and really believe, because even people that don't want to help themselves, it's a symptom. It's because on a fundamental level, you feel like, why help yourself? Not worth it. So getting love and getting this understanding and getting someone that truly listens to you on an emotional level can really help you open up. That's why I also said that I would love to be there for you guys, because now I understand it. I understand what you guys need, what you guys lack. Some of you, not all of you. And I understand how I can help in that regards. Although I do think that these streams might be helpful, because if you guys really look up to me, or some people look up to me, I'm just telling you guys, it's important to understand that there ain't nothing wrong with you. You don't have to judge yourself. Allow yourself to be and allow yourself to make some mistakes, and just don't run away from your fears. Try to experience them, go at them, and don't label yourself, don't judge yourself. Because even in my language, when I say don't run away, maybe when you then play games, you go like, oh, I'm running away, I'm bad. No, just experience the emotion. Go try to find it out where it comes from, and by experiencing them, you can overcome so much. That's what I realized, and once that is done, and when you become more conceptually oriented and focused, not only will action come automatically, but also a lot of the insights that I talk about, you will just come up with it themselves. And then even if you feel like having a big impact or working with like-minded people, you just come over and apply and have an impact here. But all these things come naturally. I have to apply. I have to go there, or I'm not responsible or whatever. The sense of responsibility is something that grows from within.
Subscribe to youtube.com/AtheneWins. Watch the live stream at twitch.tv/AtheneLive and follow The Real Athene on Snapchat. The Athene Real Talk podcast explores controversial ideas to stimulate debate and active thinking. These ideas do not always reflect Athene's personal views. Welcome to the Athene Real Talk podcast.
He has been called the best gamer in the world, hands down.
World famous gamer and philanthropist Athene.
Gaming for Good, it's called, has raised more than $20 million.
Using his notoriety to raise money for charity.
On activism, science, culture, and self-development.
Proud to have him in the studio today. I would not want to take you on in a video game.
Bronzoli says, Athene, going with understanding and accepting helped me a lot. A great insight. But I have a question. If you interact with a close person like a friend and that person acts in a way which is likely causing harm to me and maybe him, but he won't see it because of his reference frame, can you still just go with understanding and hope the way himself? Or is there a situation to be confrontational and direct assuming otherwise this might never become visible in his reality? Well, Bronzolis, that's a really good question. And it's a very hard one to answer. Because of course it depends from situation to situation. And the extent to which I can give you an answer to this question is the extent to which you understand your own emotions. Because if you go about life and you start understanding yourself and you give it a try, by making it come true to your actions and your behavior, people will even wonder how come you went through this change. And then you are in a better position to explain to your friend how he can also try and go about it the same way. But the problem is that you're looking at the stream, you trust me, you take the time and initiative to really lay down in your bed and read what your emotions are trying to tell you. And by understanding them, you can relieve a lot of it. For your friend, it's much harder. My advice would be to use cognitive empathy. And what is cognitive empathy? It's basically putting yourself in his shoes, trying to understand why he does what he does. The problem, though, is that cognitive empathy gets broken when the person is a threat to you. Because when he's a threat to you, you have to protect yourself. And cognitive empathy requires you to lower your defenses and be truly in his world. So I understand that if the situation is one where he really harms you, the best way you can go about it is like you would tell a child in a respectful manner that you really care for him and you really want the best for him, but that certain of his behavior is not okay and that it harms you. You can really say that in a very respectful manner. If he doesn't listen or if he gets angry or whatever, you can just with really kindness and authority and integrity explain it again. And if the person is in a position where he actually has power over you, then it becomes a bit more complicated because then you have to start thinking more pragmatically. Because you can't just give your opinion, you can't just say what you want to say, you gotta start thinking more emotionally, intelligently. It's like a slave owner back in the days, right? A slave, if he would go to his slave owner and talk about integrity and say these things are not fine, he would just get killed, you know? So obviously a slave could not talk back to his slave owners. But today, nowadays, we live in a world where we're more free. So if he has control over you, then you can first wonder how can you become independent, and becoming independent really allows you to be more free. That's why it's such an important thing in our development to be able to live by our own self on our own feet, because else our parents have quite a lot of control over us. So gaining control over your own life is very crucial. So